What should I do if U.S. immigration authorities conduct a neighborhood check in my case and my neighbor provides them with false, misleading, or negative information about me? In this video, I'm going to go over how you can defend yourself against these neighborhood checks and how you can protect yourself from a negative adjudication now that USCIS has announced this neighborhood check policy and the return of neighborhood checks when it comes to naturalization applications. First and foremost, welcome back to the channel. I really appreciate you tuning in again. I've really appreciated everyone's support on all these videos. My name is Adrian Pandev. I'm an attorney who helps foreign nationals navigate the US legal system. And in this video, we're going to talk about neighborhood checks and what you can do if your colleagues, neighbors, employers, etc., provide negative information about you that may negatively impact your immigration case. So let's jump right into it. So first and foremost, right, what you need to keep in mind is that you, the applicant, right, the applicant for naturalization, must have an interview in which you have to go and pass the civics test, the English test, etc. So you will be speaking to the immigration officer, to the USCIS officer, who will be actually deciding your case. So if there's negative information in the record, so basically USCIS did do a neighborhood check, they spoke with people in your life, and they have questions about this, you will most likely be asked about this at your interview, and you will be providing sworn testimony in which you can explain away any of these negative things and that your neighbors, colleagues, etc., whoever USCIS officer spoke with, said about you. So first and foremost, you can defend yourself through your own testimony in your immigration interview. And obviously this is critical. If you have a horrible relationship with a coworker and they spoke with that coworker and lied about you, then you will be able to provide your own testimony. In addition to that, you will also be providing evidence and have the ability to provide evidence, documentary evidence in your case. In addition to, filing your application and any explanation provided in the application, you can provide documents such as affidavits from friends, family, colleagues, neighbors, etc., talking about your good moral character. You can provide proof that you've been paying your taxes. You can provide proof that you've had a job for a long time and have been, gainfully employed. You can prove your education, etc. All those attributes that were listed in the memo that I covered in the other video that I recorded on the good moral character. So the bottom line is you can use evidence to rebut any of these things your neighbors, colleagues, or whoever immigration officer spoke with said about you. So between your testimony and the documents you can submit, there's a very strong defense that you should be able to put up, and USCIS officers will be giving that evidence also weight, not just what others said about you. Another important thing to note is that if USCIS actually does one of these neighborhood checks in your case, it is highly unlikely that they're only going to speak to one person. So like one of your neighbors or one of your colleagues or just your employer, right? It is most likely if they want to gather this information, they're going to be speaking to several people. So just because one person says something that's negative about you, it's unlikely if you're a good law-abiding person that all people they speak with will all say the same thing and come up with the same lie or say something misleading about you, especially if they're from different parts of your life. And one important thing about this that I always tell everyone, people don't generally interact with law enforcement, especially federal law enforcement. It is scary. So if ever asked and questioned by federal law enforcement, people who don't interact with these, with law enforcement commonly will definitely say the truth just because they're so intimidated and so scared and they don't want to get in trouble themselves. So while it's possible that multiple people would lie, generally speaking, if those people are completely unrelated, it would be unlikely. So keep in mind, they won't just speak to your next door neighbor who you don't talk to and you really dislike. They will most likely speak to more than one person, and we'll look at the totality of those answers. In addition to all of this, keep in mind that it's unlikely that USCIS will be employing this neighborhood check system in the majority of naturalization applications. Basically, the cost of having officers go and investigate, go and speak to people is incredibly high. And if there's nothing wrong with the case, it would be an enormous burden and just very high costs for very low benefit, right? And even the agency stated in the memo that they're bringing these neighborhood checks back and that they will be they are no longer waived and can be used by the officers on a case-by-case basis, but generally they're reserved for inconsistencies, sort of if you provided questionable evidence or if there's specific concerns about a case. So the idea is the story is not adding up, or we're seeing, you said you've never been arrested for a crime, but we pulled your criminal background check and some arrests came up, or similar inconsistencies where the story and what they're seeing in the background checks and the application are not matching. In these cases, the officers may conduct these neighborhood checks to gather more information and to do a background investigation on the case. Now, keep in mind, FDNS, which is the investigation arm of USCIS, does a lot of investigations already where they don't believe an applicant's story. This is very common in marriage-based green card cases. So although invasive and obviously not something anyone wants to go through, this is something that U.S. immigration enforcement has been doing for a while. So keep in mind, and my point with this is that I don't think that these neighborhood checks will be common, and I don't think they're going to be used in every single naturalization application. Obviously, if this were to change, or if that's what ends up happening, I'll be recording more videos letting everyone know. But as of this moment, I think they're going to be used in a minority, and I think a significant minority, a small percentage of cases. So if you're worried about this because you don't like your neighbors or you don't like your colleagues and you're worried what they're going to say about you, and you have, you're checking all no boxes, no crimes, no arrests, no issues with the case, I don't think you should be overly worried about a neighborhood check because it may be unlikely to happen in your case. Similar point to this is keep in mind what this neighborhood check is about, right? And what the goal of this neighborhood check is, right? It's not about finding out whether all your neighbors like you as a person or whether you're the most popular person in the neighborhood or your office, right? It's about making sure that you have the requisite good moral character and you're actually eligible to apply and become a U.S. citizen. So the questions will be more geared towards this, right? For example, if USCIS is trying to ascertain whether or not you have physically resided inside the U.S., right? You meet the physical presence requirement. They could ask your neighbors or your colleagues, hey, has this individual been coming to work? Have they been going to sleep here? Like, how long have they lived here? And they're just verifying and making sure that you meet the requirements. But it's not like it's a popularity contest, and just because you and your neighbor don't talk, or you dislike the majority of your team at work, if they start saying all kinds of slanderous, horrible things about you, that USCIS is just going to deny your immigration application, right? Your naturalization application. And also keep in mind, lying to a federal officer is also a crime, right? So it's serious stuff. And I don't think the very vast majority of people talking to these officers will start fabricating things and lying. I think they'll be too afraid to do so. And then the final point I want to make is, let's say USCIS does conduct a neighborhood check in your case. Let's say they actually discover a lot of negative information from everyone they speak with, and there's all these negative attributes that they discovered, and they believe that your case should be denied because you can't prove that you have good moral character and you qualify for naturalization. Well, in these cases, you will be issued a notice of intent to deny, especially if this happens at your interview, if the officer discusses this with you at your interview, or a request for evidence. So basically, you will be given or you will be sent a letter to which you can apply with additional evidence to show why the information that the agency gathered during its investigations is incorrect or is not the full picture. So basically, you will have a chance to rebut and answer any sort of negative inferences that the agency has reached. So you can use, affidavits from friends, colleagues, family members, etc. You can use all your accomplishments, all the good things you've done, and whether it's in the community or at work, whatever it may be, right? And all those positive attributes and listed in the memo, you could address each and one of those with evidence that you may have to prove that, in fact, you qualify for naturalization, you qualify to become a U.S. citizen. So under no means, the bottom line, and this should be your main takeaway from this video, do I think that just because one neighbor says something incorrect or some false, basically misleading information about you, that you will be denied in your naturalization application. I think generally speaking, if it comes to the point that the agency, USCIS, and immigration officers go out and speak to people in the field, they're going to try to gather more facts. Obviously, if you applied for naturalization yourself, you're going through this all by yourself, and you find out that there was, a neighborhood check that was conducted, and you have received a notice of intent to deny or an RFE or anything like that on your case, you should definitely make sure that you're preparing a strong response. So if you're worried about this, speak to a qualified lawyer, get some help, and make sure you can file a strong response to any sort of negative information that USCIS has received. However, again, do I think these neighborhood checks are going to be common in each and every case? And if you're sitting at home worried about, oh my God, like I said, my neighbor Bob, I don't like him, and I'm worried what he's going to say about me, but you're filing a clean case. It's all, no boxes, no crimes, no arrests, paying your taxes on time, absolutely no issues ever. I would not be so worried about what Bob will say, because I think it's highly unlikely that anyone will speak with Bob. Yes, I cannot guarantee that. I'm not USCIS. I'm not the one ordering the neighborhood checks. But from where I'm sitting and what I know about law enforcement and how I view these cases, I just don't think these are going to become standard in each and every case going forward. It's just another tool that the agency and the officers can now use on a case-by-case basis. If you have not watched my previous video on this or my previous videos on the good moral character memo as well as the neighborhood check policy change, I've recorded videos on these where I go through them in much more detail. I know this one focused much more specifically on how you can defend yourself in case negative information comes up in one of these neighborhood checks, but go ahead and check out those videos. I will continue to post videos like this. If you have any questions, comments, or just any thoughts about any of this, post them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to record more videos like this. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching the channel. Thank you.